especially thank you to the NARM collective who have organised all of this. Really, really thank you. Thank you so much. Today, I thought I'd share with you some of my lessons and learnings from organising and being in activism over the past few years. Number one, activism is about doing what is right, not just what is comfortable. This means often choosing the path less travelled. It sometimes means going against the grain. This might mean walking away from opportunities and jobs and projects that you might be doing that don't align with your values. It might mean losing your friends. I know some vegans can relate. Can anyone relate? Yeah, not great. It might mean standing up to bullies. It might mean standing up against oppressive behaviour too. It might mean taking a risk. It might mean doing something that you never thought was even possible for you. Doing what is right over what is comfortable is really hard and often a really big sacrifice. It can hurt a lot of the time, but I think it's what we need to do to change our world for the better. I applaud every vegan here today. Thank you all for being here, for making the conscious choice to choose and stand on the right side of history. That is the meaning of true solidarity. Thank you. So number two, one of my ideas for activism is do your homework. Now, what does that mean? I'm not just talking to the vegan kids out there. I'm actually talking probably more towards the adults. So if you're a new or a younger vegan, I would really recommend looking into the legacy and the history of our movement, especially within the UK. We have an amazing, amazing history of animal rights in the UK. What is the Animal Liberation Front? Who are the hunt saboteurs? Who was Jill Phipps? And who was Barry Horn? I hope you know some of those names. If you don't, please, please look them up. May they all rest in power. Now, what we mean by rest in power, when the correct meaning of that term, you say it when someone has died within the struggle. So that's what we say for those people, because they died in struggle. They died in the struggle for animal rights, and we must remember them. We would not be here today, all of us, without the sacrifices that those people have made. We would not be here without their uncompromising dedication and relentless action for the animals. We stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. Let's show them some respect and remember. We can use their memory to ground us in integrity as we move forward towards a liberated future for all animals. Number three, we need to take care of ourselves and each other as humans too. I've heard some really sad stories recently. I won't go into detail, but some vegans out there, some activists are really struggling. And some of them felt like this world was just too much to bear. I think we all feel like that sometimes. I definitely feel like that sometimes. It's not only the human animals that we're grieving, it's the non-human animals too. We're grieving everybody. Sometimes this work can be too emotional, too scarring, too tiring, too stressful. It can sometimes have legal repercussions that can impact us in a multitude of different ways. We can lose ourselves to burnout. The cause for animal freedom is a commitment to a different kind of liberation, one that we may never get to see in our lifetime. Now that is something that is a really scary thought for me. People like Barry Horn, Jill Phipps, and Regan Russell, who all died in struggle, never got to see the future. They never got to see the future, the fruits of their labor, and the results of all the actions that they took. So many animals have also died in struggle and will never get to see that justice too. I think about the orca, Lolita, or Toki, as sometimes they're known as well, and how they died in a tank and how they never got to see freedom. It's an extremely brave position to take to become a vegan and live a life within your values in this cold culture of indifference and pain. Please, 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 can we look after each other? Can we look after each other? Yes. Let's make a habit to check in with each other every now and then. Even if you think your friends are okay, like, it's always worth just checking in. We need to be as strong and resilient as we can for the animals so we can keep doing this work. We have to win. We deserve to win for all those that we've lost and for all the animals suffering right now and for future generations to come. Number 4, animals are not passive. So what do I mean by that? Non-human animals have and will always resist in their own ways. We must never forget to stay humble and remember that we are always going to be part of their oppressor species. We are not their gods, we're not their masters, we're not their saviors. If we listen to their cries, we know that they have voices. We are assisting them in their struggle. Let's take the human ego out of the equation and be more in tune with them and what they need and what they want. Number 5, you are exactly the kind of person that this movement needs. Any new vegans here today? Anyone first Animal Rights March? Yeah! That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I remember my first Animal Rights March. It wasn't great. People were laughing at us on the street. People still do. People were doing that today, but I feel like it's getting better. It's getting better, definitely. We all have our own unique strengths, all right? So mine is arts. I like making banners, as you can see. But it might be something completely different for you. You might find out what it is that you're really good at through doing activism, right? That's happened for me, definitely. So, it's never too late to start. I think it's never too late to start. Look around as well. There's so many people here, everywhere, who will be able to help you. We'll be able to help you on your journey if you want to become an activist, if you want to start getting active for the animals. Please, 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 get involved. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, so I'm going to start my speech by asking you a question. It's a question you've heard hundreds of times today when we were shouting on the streets, but I want to hear you shout it again. I want to hear the conviction in your voices, and I want to know that you're going to come away from here today feeling empowered and encouraged and ready to continue this fight for animal rights. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I really want you to answer me. I want you to shout and I want you to scream. So I ask you, what do we want? Now that was good, but I think we can do better. Let's call that a practice one, a little test to see if our voices still worked after all the shouting today. So I'm going to ask you again, but this time I really want you to answer me. I want everybody here to answer me. So I ask, what do we want? When do we want it? Thank you. I really needed to hear that from you. I find that really empowering. So there's just something so empowering about a march like this, because there's so many of us here joined by one big common purpose, and there's strength in numbers, because together we can come away from here today and we can make a huge difference. We can change history if we continue to raise our voices like we have today. So you must never underestimate your ability to affect change. You must never underestimate your ability to convince others of what is right and what is true. Each and every one of us has a part to play in achieving animal liberation. We each have our own skills, abilities and strengths that we can bring to this movement, and we need to utilise them. We need to work harder than ever before because the animals need us more than ever before. So I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about myself. So I'm a vegan academic. I'm writing my PhD on historical versions of our diet and activism. I'm also a street activist and local community organiser, and I've tried very hard to build up my own group of activists in Cambridge. One of my life goals is to teach the history of animal rights and veganisms in universities, to look back over history and to demonstrate how prevalent our ideology is in the literature of the ages. That's one of my goals. Well, I'm also an ultra runner who represents Vegan Runners UK. Are there any vegan runners here today? Can you all raise your hands up if you're a vegan runner? I mean, there's thousands of us now. The club is absolutely huge, and I saw quite a few hands go up. So Vegan Runners is quite literally the best running club in the world, because we're all vegans, we're all from a complete multitude of abilities and backgrounds. You know, it doesn't matter if you're fast or slow, every runner's welcome. And we demonstrate that you can still be compassionate and run and be fit and healthy. So come join us if you're into running, come look up Vegan Runners UK. I'm sure you might have seen the flags, there's quite a few vegan runner tops here today. So through my ultra running and my representation of vegan runners, over the last year I've raised £2,500 for animal sanctuaries and animal rights groups. Thank you. So just this time a week ago, literally a week ago right now, I ran 50 miles which raised just over £500 for the retreat down in Kent. And I know some people here today did sponsor me, so thank you to everybody who contributed to that. Thank you. I know there's a lot of people asking for donations for stuff, so thank you for supporting me. And if you're interested in seeing my future activism through running, you can do so by following me on Instagram and Twitter. My name's Sean, and I've got the handle @ultravegan, and I'm on Facebook by my actual name. Earlier this year, I also ran the Cambridge Half Marathon, dressed as a giant inflatable beagle with the words "Free the MBR Beagles" written across my t-shirt. So pictures of me made it into local press. Hundreds of people saw me in the outfit on the day. People shouted the slogan back to me when they saw me running past them. And I did this to help raise awareness about the campaign and support the activists themselves at Camp Beagle. And they've been going strong for over 2 years. Their dedication to this movement is incredible. I know that there are supporters of Camp Beagle here today and some members of Camp Beagle, so can we have a huge round of applause for Camp Beagle for their continued strength and resilience. So if you guys can support them at any point, please do. They do such incredible stuff. So ultra running is a very hard sport, and it takes a lot of stubbornness to partake in it. So to keep running when your body is quite literally telling you to stop. A marathon is difficult, but when you start sticking them back to back or dress up in animal costumes, it takes an awful lot to keep going. But we must keep going, one foot in front of the other, no matter how hard it gets. And this is true for every day as well as running. We cannot stop moving forward, and we cannot stop with our activism. So to the tired, hard-working activists among you, I say, do not stop. You cannot stop. Keep going. You must keep going and give this movement everything you have. For the animals, for the sake of our children, and for the future of all life on this planet, you cannot stop. You must keep going. I know it's hard. I've seen many friends fall away from this movement, people I looked up to and respected, people I counted as family. But we cannot fall away. Sure, we can take breaks for our own well-being, we can have time off when we need to, but we must never stop advocating for the animals in the long run, because they need us. I still hear the screams of the pigs from the first vigil I attended, and I won't ever forget them. I can hear them now, and they remind me to keep going. So to the new vegans who are here today for the first time joining us at an animal rights march, I say, please stand with us. Please don't let today be it. Instead, let this be your rallying cry. Let this be the moment you rise up and make a stand for the animals. Let this be the day you become an animal rights activist, as I did in 2019 when I attended my first march. I sat in the crowd like where you are today, and I heard Earthling Ed's speech, and afterwards I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. He told me that being vegan was not enough, and I was hit by a wave of guilt because of the years where I was not active. For almost a decade I was a quiet vegan, I was silent. But no longer. I walked away that day with a clear vision of my future, with a clear idea of who and what I must become to make a difference. And the reality is, I'm still just getting started. I'm still trying to become that person because there's so much more I want to do. Thank you. But I want you to feel the same. I want you to feel like this is just your beginning, and that you're going to walk away from here today empowered, encouraged and supported. We are part of a movement, one that will only get bigger as we continue to put more energy and strength into it. So please help us to the new vegans. Please support us. Thank you. I also want to say thank you to everybody who marched today for being a voice for the animals. But I want you to come away from here and do more, whether that's something simple like leafleting or stickering, or telling your friends and family about the horrors of dairy. I want you to continue. I want you to do more activism, but these are just words that I'm asking you. These are not enough. It's not enough for me to say this. I also want to hear you say these words. So I'm going to finish my speech by performing a little exercise with you. So could everybody please stand up? Okay, wonderful, thank you. Most people are up. So, yes, please do this for me. So, I want you to make a promise. A promise made to all the animals currently crammed in cages, to those stuffed in the backs of trucks on the ways to slaughterhouses. A promise made to all the test subjects and all those used in an unimaginable number of horrific ways. You make this promise to them, and I want you to think about them right now as you say the words. So, can you please place your hand on your right heart, on your heart? So I want you to repeat back to me what I say, line by line. To the animals. I promise to be your voice. I will not stop. I will never stop. Not until every cage is open and empty. Okay, thank you everyone. You can sit down or stand over some tea. Okay, so huge clap to the organisers of the march. So I'm going to finish here by asking you the same question that I started with. What do we want? When do we want it? Now! Are we going to fight for it? Are we going to get it? Yes! Then let's do this. Let's go get it. Thank you, everyone. Hammer!
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep this pretty short. I just want to share some of my experience. I was really happy to be asked to speak at this year's Animal Rights March because this is a very important event for me. In 2017, I attended the march with my family. At the age of 14, my whole life I wanted to get involved in activism. My mum's been an animal rights activist all my life. Unfortunately, photographers were paid to follow me to the march and take photos that later ended up in a court case against my mum for sedition of minors. In other words, they were saying that my mum brainwashed me into being vegan. How ridiculous it seems that someone could be punished for teaching their children basic empathy and compassion, but that's exactly what happened. Age 12, having never actually protested in my life, I had an anti-protest order. All because my parents were under investigation for their activism. No charges came out of it, just court orders. If I learned anything in these court cases, it's that the judicial system is not on our side. This is why we as activists, we have to be so careful. A court will never have the animals' well-being in mind. They see them as only property. The laws surrounding animal rights are being strengthened constantly. The legal system is not a fair one. We have to be careful. 4 years after that march, after I turned 18 and my court orders came off, I attended the Animal Rights March in 2021. I was so happy to finally be able to come, and also so happy to see how many other younger people were also there fighting for the animals. More and more vegans mean more and more vegans having children. As someone who is raised vegan, I can say 100% that it is the best thing you can possibly do for your child. I feel so lucky to have been raised by such strong and compassionate parents. To any vegan parents doubting themselves or falling for the lies they're told that your children will get ill or they'll wish you let them be normal, they won't. Since that March, I've been doing activism consistently for almost 2 years. If I can give one piece of advice to vegans everywhere, it's to get involved in your local animal rights activist community. It's so insanely important that we all have each other for support. The London animal rights scene are my second family, and I'm so blessed to know such incredible, passionate people. The main reason to get involved, though, is of course for the animals. They need us to be fighting. Veganism is a moral baseline. We need to be doing more than just eating a plant-based diet. There aren't enough activists turning up at events. All events in London can be found on Facebook and Instagram under London Animal Rights Activism. I just want to finish with reminding us all that we are fighting for abolition of all animal cruelty and exploitation, not less of it. We must fight until every cage is empty. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Broughton.
Hello everyone, it's really great to be here, and it's been great to catch up with people I haven't seen for a while. Now some of you may know that I was recently on an enforced holiday at a hotel in Peterborough, HMB Peterborough, and I got to tell you, the room service was shit. But here I am again, back out with you once more with my tag on. I have to be in. Unfortunately, it's deemed that I'm still a problem, so I have to be in home by 9 PM every evening. But I don't want to fill this speech full of curt references to my woes. And though some of you know what that means exactly. So, the Animal Rights March. What I've got to say isn't going to take long, but it's important it's said. As the introduction said, I joined the animal rights movement at the beginning of the 1980s. And it's that animal rights movement that I address today. We've come a long way, but there is still a very, very long way to go. And what I want to do more than anything, as someone from the past, you know, one of those dinosaur animal rights people, is talk to the younger people directly. It's the movement that you're taking over. My message today is to you, and it's this. Please do not forget the principles that this movement was built on. And I want to give you an example, because I often read online in social media these arguments, these pointless arguments between vegans and plant-based and all the rest of it. It doesn't matter. And here's why it doesn't matter. When I used to get in a van in the early 1980s on a Saturday morning with a group of other people to go to a hunt or go on a march to a laboratory or a slaughterhouse, I would get in a van with 1 or 2 vegans, probably more vegetarians, and even 1 or 2 meat eaters. But I can guarantee you one thing. The animal rights people in that van, within a few weeks, had changed everyone into an animal rights activist and consequently a vegan. So let's stop the arguments about what you call yourself. It doesn't matter. But the principle of animal rights does matter. It matters so much that we're prepared to devote our whole lives to it. I'm exceptionally proud of the movement that was and is the animal rights movement. And that's what keeps me coming back. That's what keeps me making these speeches that you all have to suffer every now and again. I'm knocking on, right? I'm getting older and I can feel it. But I have a responsibility, and this is what I'm talking about here. You all have a responsibility to the animal rights movement. And in that responsibility is the commitment to fight for animal rights. These other arguments are of no consequence. They're really not. They matter not a jot. And in fact, the only people they help are those in authority who want to divide us. And I know that as much as anybody, and probably more than most of you. I know what it feels like to be persecuted by the police. I know what it's like to be in prison for your beliefs. I've been through all that and I'm still going through it now. But the thing I say to you is the thing I say to myself. It doesn't matter, because the prize is worth every bit of it. Every bit of discomfort, every bit of suffering, every bit of standing in the cold, every bit of being assaulted by Hunt supporters, every bit of even sitting in a prison cell is worth it. I don't regret a single second of 1 minute of 1 hour of my whole existence in this movement. If I had to do my all again, I would do the same all over again. I have no regrets, neither should you. There are always going to be difficulties, and if you think about it, a movement like ours, faced with what we're faced with, should expect there to be problems and troubles and difficulties and sacrifice. And it's sacrifice as well that's important. And I don't mean the sacrifice of going to prison or even losing your life, and that has happened to our people in our movement. We have lost people in tragic circumstances. Worse than that, who've been killed by people involved in animal abuse. But the sacrifices are every day. When you get up to a protest, when you get up to go sabbing, when you get up to go on a march, if you say to yourself, oh, I don't really feel like it, think about that. That is an insult to our movement. That is an insult to those animals who are waiting for their freedom and their liberation. So my message again is to all you young people, and it is you that matter more than anything now. Because people like me are from the past. I'm still here and I will remain here to the bitter end. But I want to know that you youngsters and those taking over the movement now always remember those principles of the animal rights movement. And that is to get active. Activists are the most important thing in our movement. Academics come and go, academics help us understand, but it's activists and activism that count more than anything, because without it we wouldn't have a movement. Without the sacrifice by the activists, we would not have an animal rights movement. We will not have a movement that is on the brink of victories now. Things are happening. It looks hard, but let's remember, MBR acres are under pressure like they haven't been in there for 20 or 30 years because of activism. The hunting world is in turmoil. In turmoil. I was at a hunt last night, a club hunt last night at 5:30, and I've got to be home at 9 o'clock, otherwise I turn into a prisoner again. But I don't care, right? Because I know that it's about commitment. But I can tell you those people are running scared. The hunters know the time is up, and MBR acres know, and they must understand, as every slaughterhouse and every factory farm and anybody else involved in the exploitation and murder of living beings must understand that the animal rights movement will never ever back down. It's about being bloody minded. It's about sticking to those values. So if I can offer anything from that past, it's that. I've learnt that you win, not through emotion all the time, not through because it's right, it is right, but you win because you refuse to back down. You refuse to give in to those with power and authority that still allow this suffering of millions and millions of animals. And once you get like that, once you adopt that, you're unstoppable. They know it, you're unstoppable. They've tried everything to destroy our movement. Over the decades I've been involved, they have tried everything and they have failed, and they will never succeed in silencing us. Never. Never, never, never. So I'm not going to say much more because, you know, you've heard me too many times and I don't like really going on too much. I am passionate. I'm very, very angry, very angry. And I don't see anger as a bad thing. I see it as a bloody good thing. They fuck me off, these people, they really do. Sorry I swore again. I promised I wouldn't, but I did. There you go. I only swore once. But they do. They do make me so angry. And anger is not a bad emotion, it's a bloody good emotion to have. Because with that burning anger inside, it will keep you going. When times get hard, it will keep you going. That anger, what's done to these animals inside places like MBR, inside factory farms, inside the slaughterhouses, on the hunting fields. We see it, we suffer through seeing it, and we act, and we must keep acting. So, thank you again for listening. I wish you all well. Hopefully I'll be here at the next one. If not, write to me at HMB Peterborough. But if there's any justice, we will win. All right? Thanks very much. Look after yourselves.
Final speaker is Wendy McGovern. I'm guessing one or two people might have heard her name in the past. Wendy first got involved with grassroots animal rights at the age of 17 through anti-vivisection activism with Uncaged campaigns. Since then, her activism has been diverse, including event organising, stall holding, outreach, protests and volunteering with local rescue and farmed animal sanctuaries. Her recent projects include setting up and hosting the Thrive Vegan World podcast, in which she discusses all things animal rights, liberation and veganism with guest activists and academics. Wendy is also the co-host of the Animal Rights Show, which streams regularly on YouTube and deals with themes and issues relevant to the animal movement. In 2021, Wendy hosted the Animal Rights March in London and is a regular speaker at animal rights events. Wendy has been living vegan for over 26 years, and she is here right now to give you a message. Please, Wendy McGovern.
Good afternoon, everyone. How you all doing? Thanks so much for the organisers of this. It's been a brilliant day. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And thank you to all of you for turning up. I wasn't sure with the strikes how many people would get here, but this is an amazing crowd. Alan was right. It's brilliant to look out at all of your faces. So, I get the short straw of following Mel Broughton. Thanks, Mel. So yeah, I've just got a few things to say. So the animal rights movement is different to other social justice movements. Other animals live under the tyranny of an oppressor and face an injustice on an unthinkable size and scale. But unlike other movements, the oppressed individuals are not the ones who mobilize their own movement. Instead, it falls to us humans to stand as their advocates, allies, and accomplices to seek justice on their behalf. That's not to say that our fellow animals are voiceless, or that they do not resist their oppression. They protest with their voices and resist with their bodies, but their protests are ignored and their resistance is quashed and often punished. Nor should we discount those who cannot or do not resist. For the systems they are born into are such that they have been force-bred, genetically manipulated, imprisoned, enslaved, and coerced, or displaced from their homes and cut off from the resources they need to thrive. Under a tyranny such as this, is it any wonder that for so many resistance seems futile or impossible? As allies to those born into bodies other than human, as Patrice Jones would say, the larger than human world, we need to dismantle the ideology of human supremacy and speciesism. And to do this, we have to be the change we want to see and recognize our own human privilege and the speciesist programming that we have been conditioned by our whole lives. To change the oppressive nature of our relationships with other animals, it's important that we practice humility, curiosity, and respect in all of those relationships. The number of other animals being oppressed is beyond what most of us can even imagine. But it is important to remember that each one of those is an individual as unique as you and me. Human supremacy denies the individuality of our fellow animals. Instead, They are seen as objects, as property, and as disposable commodities, here for us to use as we choose. We consume their bodies. We wear their skin. We use them as test subjects. We bring them into our homes in expectation of companionship. We coerce them to entertain us. We force them to work for us. And we perceive them as a mere backdrop to a world colonized, controlled, and dominated by humans. If human supremacy denies their individuality, as their allies, we should be mindful of not lumping all other animals together in one homogenized group. When we can, we need to center them as individuals, the individuals that they are, with their own needs and desires. Individuals with emotional lives, with families and friends. Individuals with agency, sensitivity and creativity, who help build communities, who influence their own cultures, and they shape the world that they share with us. We should also take care not to paint them only as weak, helpless, voiceless victims, because this misrepresents who they truly are. To uphold the false hierarchy of speciesism, humans deny that we belong in the category of animal at all, and so have created a false dichotomy of human and animal. So there are humans, and then there's everyone else. In doing this, we separate ourselves from the millions of other species we call animal. We place our own species as a pinnacle and see everyone else as inferior. This self-deception feeds our prejudices and allows us to discriminate against non-human animals. Our discrimination has become so normalized that oppressive practices are woven like threads into the tapestry of our cultures and societies. As animal advocates, we see the world differently to most other humans. And so we find ourselves constantly swimming against the tide. Our eyes and our hearts are open to the ubiquitous and continual oppression and injustice and the unspeakable atrocities perpetrated on our fellow animals every second of every day. Not only must we live with that, but as activists, we are choosing to speak out against what is seen as normal by most. Our path is not an easy one. It can be physically and emotionally exhausting. We can feel angry, frustrated, sad, full of sorrow and grief, and many of us are traumatized by what we see and hear, and also by the things that are hidden away from view. If ignorance is bliss, then knowledge can be excruciating. But these are normal emotions in reaction to the terrible plight of our fellow animals. Some emotions, like the anger triggered by injustice, are drivers of action. They tell us that we need to act, just like thirst tells us we need to drink, and hunger tells us that we need to eat. Our anger tells us this oppression is wrong. So rather than trying to get rid of our emotions or shut them down, which can be in itself detrimental to our health, we can use these emotions to motivate us and channel them into our activism. As the human animals who make up the animal rights movement, it is important that we practice our own self-care. And self-care is not just an individual practice, but it happens in groups and communities, because we are animals wired for connection with others as a basic primal need to survive and thrive. We need to take care of ourselves and seek support from each other. And that's why events like this are extremely important for our resilience as activists. That we come together as a community of like-minded people with a common goal, in solidarity and support for each other. I'd just like to acknowledge each and every one of you for having the courage to take the hard path. It is undoubtedly the right path. This movement is full of passionate, motivated, dedicated activists. Please look around you and see that you are not alone in this fight. Today is also an opportunity to be loud and clear about our dissent of the status quo of human supremacy, to be seen, heard and felt on the streets of London and beyond. It's a chance for us as allies to show our solidarity to the individuals we stand with and seek justice for. There is no one magic bullet that will bring animal liberation. Our quest for justice will need a multi-pronged attack, and each of us will have our weapons of choice, things we are good at, aligned with and drawn to. But there's one important and powerful tool that we all use in our activism. On our placards at protests, on our posters and flyers, in outreach conversations with the public, in media releases, in written articles, in interviews, school talks, university lectures, social media posts and threads, even our daily conversations with friends, family and colleagues. And that tool is our language. Words are powerful and carry meaning beyond the words themselves. Indeed, words not only describe the world, they also shape it. And for a social movement, language is fundamental to expressing the core values and the claims of the movement. In her brilliant book, Animal Equality, Joan Danae says, "The way we speak about other animals is inseparable from the way we treat them." Recently, I gave a speech called Beyond Speciesism, Language and Liberation. And so I'd like to conclude with a section from that speech. Humans downplay the individuality, sensitivity and creativity and the emotional lives of other animals and the violations perpetrated against them through our language, through our euphemisms, our metaphors, our stories and even our humour. Our words reflect and perpetuate human supremacy and speciesism and strengthen our oppressive practices. The verbal deception and trickery we use in our language denigrates and discounts other animals. And in doing all of this, we sanitize enslavement, we normalize sexual assault and manipulated breeding, and we legitimize murder and genocide. Conventional language classifies other animals with inanimate things. We call them something, not someone. Person and people are standardly used only for humans. And this helps to maintain emotional distance and feelings of superiority. Other animals are referred to as it, reinforcing their inferior status as objects and commodities, and should always be avoided, even when deemed grammatically correct. As animal advocates, we need to be aware of not playing into the hands of the oppressor, and there is a way we may be inadvertently doing just that. And that is by perpetuating the paradigm of so-called welfarism through our language. I'm not talking about the well-being of other animals. As advocates for animal rights, we know the importance of respecting the inherent worth of each and every individual, and the importance of helping them thrive in the world. The well-being of individuals alive today is of paramount importance and shouldn't be sacrificed on the altar of ideals, and to better the lives of those not yet born. I'm speaking about the so-called welfare reforms for other animals with their continued use for our own gain. Some of this language is obvious: the humane slaughter, the better treatment and conditions, the grass-fed, organic, free-range nonsense that we hear so much of. Yet some language is not so obvious. Terms like love, cruelty, abuse, and treatment do not effectively convey the abolitionist goals of the animal rights movement. We have to remember that the current language use reflects the current norms of a speciesist world. The language of welfarism is spoken under the understanding of these norms. Speciesism not only happily coexists with welfarism, but is also bolstered by it. The language of welfarism allows those complicit with unjust practices to absolve themselves of any guilt or shame. Speciesists consider themselves animal lovers. Speciesists are against cruelty to other animals. Speciesists are horrified by the abuse of other animals. And speciesists care how other animals are treated. And yet, speciesists still support animal use. Of course, we want to eradicate cruelty and abuse and see more love and less suffering in the world. However, those terms are subjective. What animal advocates see as cruel, many do not. And even when they do, most see some cruelty as necessary. Necessary if it means curing a human disease, having a warm coat, and to keep consuming others' bodies and secretions. And if they see it as necessary, they do not see it as abuse. So-called farmers claim they can love cows whilst commodifying their bodies and stealing and murdering their babies. People might love the dog they live with and yet think nothing of wearing another dog's skin. We don't have to love someone to respect their inherent rights to freedom and autonomy. This subjective language provides an invisibility cloak for speciesism, helping to hide it away in plain sight. This language oils the machinery of the systems of oppression of other animals. We need to disrupt those systems by using radical language that corrodes the machinery, language that breaks the trance of those hypnotized by speciesism. And so, as abolitionists, we need to be clear with our message to cut through the confusion. To effect radical change, we need to be radical in our words and our actions. Let's use our language as a political tool for change. All forms of activism can benefit from strategic language. We want to stop rights violations. We want to fight oppression. We want to end sexual assault, manipulated breeding and murder. We want to abolish all use of other animals, regardless of whether they are loved or not. Advocates and activists, this is a call to action. Through our activism, including our language, let's disrupt the norms of human supremacy and break the trance of speciesism. We must oppose the sanitation of sexual assault and manipulated breeding. We must resist the normalization of enslavement and defy the legitimization of murder and genocide. Let's corrode the machinery and unpick the threads of oppression. Let's show the truth and shatter the lies of the oppressor. And instead, let us make a demand for respect and take a stand for justice. Let us strive for equality for all our fellow animals, regardless of the bodies they are born into. Tom Reagan said, "We don't want bigger cages, we want empty cages." I'd go further than that. I'd say we don't just want the cages emptied, we want the cages demolished. So let's stand in solidarity as allies to the other animals to say, we are here, we see you, we will not be silenced, and we will never stop fighting for your freedom. Thank you so much for listening. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Louder, what do we want? When do we want it? Now! Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
I think every Sunday they are closed, but open only to elderly folks, so they can give elderly